This is a horrific story in which a mother claims that she was manipulated to do the unthinkable, take the lives of her 2 young kids.
Are you walking? Are y'all shopping?
Yeah.
Go Peanut. Go Peanut.
No peanut. No peanut.
Yay!
The 2 adorable little boys in the clip you just watched are Maurice Baker Jr. and Jayden Howard. They were brothers from Shepherdsville, Kentucky. These boys were loved by many, and those who knew them say they were sweet, kind, and very affectionate. Tragically, these little boys' lives were cut short when they were just 6 and 9 years old.
They were great little boys. Like, I don't understand how someone, just even knowing them could do something like that.
Maurice and Jayden were killed by the one person who was supposed to love them and want to protect them the most, their own mother. 32-year-old Tiffany Ann Lucas is accused of shooting her sons to death in their own home in November of 2023. She then ran out of the house and collapsed onto the ground. Detective Richard Beal reported the bizarre events that neighbors living nearby saw on that horrific day that the boys were killed.
2 neighbors, a husband and a wife, called 911 after hearing gunshots. And Beal explained that after reviewing nearby Ring doorbell footage, you can hear 4 gunshots. They were fired within 30 seconds. And then about 5 minutes after the last shot, Lucas leaves the home and yells for help, even tells a neighbor, allegedly, that, quote, her kids were dying. That neighbor apparently ran inside, attempted to help the boys.
The neighbors stayed with the 2 little boys until the paramedics arrived. The children were both rushed to the hospital, and doctors tried to save their lives, but they later succumbed to their injuries. How could a mother do this to her own children, and why? Well, according to what she has said to law enforcement, she was manipulated through Facebook.
When police arrived, Lucas allegedly was lying in her neighbor's driveway. She was arrested. She was interviewed, and she told the police that the shooting was seemingly an accident, that someone had given her a gun.
Tiffany is facing 2 counts of murder, 1 for each child that she heartlessly gunned down. So what kind of life was Tiffany living up until this point? What was her background? And what could have led her to this? Well, if you take a look at her social media accounts, she appeared to be a pretty normal mom. She had a lot of smiling pictures that she took with her 2 little boys. She also had this image from Halloween that showed them all dressed up as Star Wars characters. They look like a typical happy family. But as we know is very often the case, social media can be very deceiving. Could Tiffany have been intentionally trying to make herself look like a loving, involved mother when there were a lot of dark secrets going on behind closed doors?
WDRB has been digging into Tiffany Lucas' background to find out more about her. We learned that she was once a business owner whom we interviewed actually in 2016. She had just opened Ms. Tiff's one-stop shop convenience store on West Broadway. We spoke with her 7 years ago about the impact as a young entrepreneur after Walmart pulled its plan to open a store in that same area.
When you take a look at this interview footage, Tiffany seems to be a pretty put-together, driven, and hardworking person.
A lot of people don't make their way down here, but if there's a Walmart, you come out of the woodworks for Walmart. So probably would have brought a lot of people to, stop and check us out.
Business records show her store closed in 2017.
But Tiffany Lucas's one-stop shop convenience store didn't end up sticking around for very long. Tiffany has had her fair share of addiction issues, and they have led her into some trouble with the law.
Later, we found she pleaded guilty to drug charges and was sentenced to 30 days in jail. There's no criminal record between 2018 and last week, when she was charged with killing her 2 young sons. Family members say they've cleaned out the Bullitt County home that she was renting. They say it was filthy with the utilities turned off and an eviction notice on the counter.
So clearly, some major issues were going on in Tiffany's life leading up to the shooting. But what were they? Did she start getting back into drugs again? Or could she have been having some sort of mental health crisis? Did other people close to Tiffany and the boys know what kind of conditions they were living in? These are the kind of questions that we're still waiting for answers on.
It was inside this home where investigators say Tiffany Lucas shot her 2 children in a shooting that ultimately led to their deaths. Now, instead of yellow tape, there are stuffed animals, flowers, and candles laid outside to honor the children's memories.
From just the outside looking in at the home where Tiffany lived with her 2 children, it looks unkempt and pretty run down. But still, just by looking at it, nobody could ever imagine what kind of horrors would end up taking place inside. Tiffany has not yet faced trial, but she has had to show her face in court for a lot of different legal matters in preparation for the trial. Many people have been completely shocked by the type of attitude she seemed to have. She literally could not look like she cares less about what is going on and seems to be completely annoyed by all the courtroom proceedings. The good news? Unless she can come up with a small fortune, she's not going to be getting out of jail anytime soon.
The 32-year-old mother appeared in court this morning via video conference, arms crossed, and said nothing during the short court arraignment. She remains in jail on 2 murder charges, 1 for each child. And as Judge Jennifer Porter read the citation, she sighed and quickly determined that Lucas was a danger to others and set the high bond.
And after reading through the citation, noting the charges specifically, 2 Class A felonies of murder, the court is finding her to be a danger to others and will set a $2 million bond.
Now, the judge said Lucas would not get credit for her time in jail towards her bond, and she's to have no firearms if she does make bond.
One thing that is important to note is that with many criminal charges, you don't have to pay the full amount that the bail is set at to bond out of jail. In the state of Kentucky, it is typically only 10%. So since her bail is set at $2 million, Tiffany would need to come up with $200,000 cash to get out of jail, or she would have to find someone willing to put up that money for her, which so far hasn't happened. A not guilty plea has been entered on Tiffany's behalf. When looking at Tiffany's expressionless face in that first courtroom appearance, some people may have argued that she could have been in shock, and that was why she looked so bored. However, as time has passed and courtroom proceedings have gone on, her attitude has seemed the same. In this court appearance, watch as Tiffany appears bored as she comes to stand before the judge who will be presiding over her case.
Commonwealth of Kentucky versus Tiffany Lucas. This is case number 23 CR 404. This Miss Lucas. Come on, you're Miss Lucas. Come on over here to the podium. The matter is before the court today to review the status of her attorney. What we're doing, ma'am, is just making sure you make contact with your lawyer. Are you representing her?
Yes, Your Honor. Richard Lonizak with the Department of Public Advocacy Trial Branch on behalf of Ms. Lucas. We would like the opportunity at this time to formally request discovery in the case.
If you look closely, just as the judge is about to dismiss Tiffany from the courtroom, she takes a look over her shoulder at the gallery.
The case is set for March the 18th at 1 o'clock to set for trial. We'll pass it to that date, all right?
Thank you, Your Honor.
It's off to the date. Sir, would you write down your name and contact information for the clerk's office?
When Tiffany looked out into that courtroom gallery, she probably saw 2 faces that she wasn't expecting to be there. But as this case goes on and she eventually goes to trial, there are 2 faces that she is going to keep seeing each and every single time she goes to court. These 2 people are Michelle Rice, the stepmother of one of the victims, and Bobby Baker, their aunt. Michelle and Bobby say that they plan to continue going to all the courtroom proceedings so that they can see justice served for both Maurice and Jayden. They want Tiffany to have to see their faces every time she walks into the courtroom and realize that they are going to make sure that she is held accountable for what she's done.
Why is it so important for you to be here, even for something little like this?
Because I just wanted to make sure that the state or whoever, they know that the boys have somebody speaking for them. And I want her to see my face every time. I want her to see our face every time she come out that courtroom. We're gonna be here.
What does that tell her?
That they have somebody fighting for them.
Michelle and Bobby are going to make sure that the whole courtroom realizes that these weren't nameless, faceless victims. These were 2 little boys that were loved and cared about and wanted.
She knows what she did, so she knows that we're going to be here and make sure that they get the justice that they deserve.
This is how it's always been. We've always been here. She just didn't want it.
Bobby says her brother, the father of the boys, has been in indescribable pain since the tragic loss. So much so that he hasn't been able to come to the court proceedings to hear the torturous details of what happened.
It's changed for me, but how has it changed for my brother? he's their, he's his father. Like I was telling Shelly the other day, if I feel the way I feel, I can only imagine what he feels. I can't imagine that.
Do you think your brother will come, or is it too hard for him?
I think it's too hard for him, really. I really do.
Michelle and Bobby are going to make sure that Maurice and Jayden are not forgotten and that they will have someone fighting for them until justice is served.
Is there anything else you all want people to know about the boys?
I think everybody that has encountered them in some form or way, they knew how sweet and innocent the boys were. They just were. I'm not just saying that because they were my nephews. They were very sweet. And they're innocent. They're kids. We shouldn't have to be here going through this. They shouldn't have had to go through what they went through at all.
According to these women, there had been red flags in the past that Maurice and Jayden had been in danger because of their mother. But when they reached out to CPS to get something done about it, nobody did anything to help them.
She did what she did, and she needs to go to jail. And you already know my opinion. It's on what I would like to see, But it's not fair to them. Again, they were innocent kids. And it should be some kind of protocol with CPS. It should be. Especially when CPS was already involved on more than one occasion. And I've contacted them. Other people have contacted them. They dropped the ball.
They also say they aren't surprised by the emotionless attitude that Tiffany has shown every single time she's appeared in court. This is a woman who is accused of killing her 2 little kids in cold blood, and yet she acts like she's an irritated brat every time she's in the courtroom. But Bobby says this is just Tiffany being Tiffany.
You mentioned that you cry every day. When I saw her in court, it's exactly the way she was the last time, which was cold, indifferent, and I don't care. Can you comment on her attitude, or do you know anything about that?
That's exactly how I feel. She just doesn't. I can't even say how I would feel because I would never do that. But it's just cold. It just shows her personality. It just shows it. It shows what we have been saying to CPS all along, and nobody ever did anything. At some point, you have to stand up for the other parent. It's not always the mom. The mom is not always right in some cases.
It sounds like in this case especially, it was Tiffany who was the biggest threat to Maurice and Jayden for a long time, even leading up to their murders. In an interview with Law and Crime, Michelle says that Tiffany would often keep her stepson Maurice, who was known as Little Reese, away from his father's side of the family, isolating him from his other extended family members.
It was always an issue with her. It was never normal.
Tiffany, you mean Tiffany?
Tiffany, yeah. The pickup and drop off was never normal. The times were never consistent. Things were with her, they weren't normal. Nothing was normal. She kept him from so much. Things we used to try to do for him, birthday parties, Christmas. During those times, she would purposely keep him. We threw big birthday parties. For Christmas time, he wouldn't get his presents till around Valentine's Day.
Michelle said that when Tiffany did allow the family to see Little Reese, they would try to make the most of their time together because they never knew when Tiffany would flip the switch and decide to keep him from them again.
When we did get him, we would try to keep him, for as long as we could before she, went into whatever crazy stage she would go into. A lot of people see the social media side of her, and that's just the social media side. It's not really how she was, off the camera, versus how personal relationship you would see her really at, or see the crazy side of her.
Like a lot of people, Tiffany put on a front on social media, and it was a front that a lot of people believed. They didn't know the truth. which was that Tiffany would leave the boys home alone when they were little, so she could go do drugs, or that the boys had ever been taken away from her in the past. Tiffany had been able to get her boys back despite the issues, but Michelle and other family members warned CPS that she wasn't yet in a place where she could be a responsible mom to her sons. CPS didn't believe them, and now there's sadly nothing that can be done to make up for that tragic mistake. So what kind of punishment will Tiffany get if she is convicted? As you can probably guess, life in prison without parole could be on the table. But Michelle says that for Tiffany to spend the rest of her life behind bars after what she did is not justice enough for Maurice and Jayden. The family is calling for nothing less than the death penalty.
We want the death penalty. That's what we want. She deserves to die. Definitely.
What sort of sentence do you think Tiffany deserves if she is convicted? Let us know in the comments below. You've been watching Trapdoor Crime. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories.